Over the past year, something fascinating has been happening in recruiting. A massive divide has been opening up. On one side, you have recruiters who are about 60% more productive than their peers. And on the other side, you have recruiters that are just trying to catch up, and either they or their organization is holding them back. But here's the kicker: it's not a new tool, it's not some magic process. The difference is how they're leveraging AI. And if you want to stay on the right side of that 60%, then you need to understand this concept that is becoming more clear every day. I'm talking about the rise of the augmented intelligent recruiter. I know it sounds a little futuristic, maybe even weird, right? But just stick with me. I'll show you why this shift is happening and what it looks like inside of real recruiting teams, and how you can position yourself to lead, not lag, in the age of AI. And I'll warn you, the divide is not what most people think. It's not technical versus non-technical recruiters. The real gap is between the complacent and the curious. So let's break that down. Before we get going, I want to make sure that we're using the same terminology. At conferences, I always like to ask, define AI, and I'll get 10 completely different answers. So let's clear this up. I want you to think of three simple buckets. The first one is automation. This is do this for me. Rules-based, if this, then that. Scheduling tools, reminders, templates, all are very super useful, but they're not really thinking. Now, if we move to bucket two and talk about Gen AI, that is ideate, research, and create with me. You're still in the driver's seat, but you have a co-pilot helping draft job descriptions, candidate summaries, outreach ideas. But then when we move into bucket three, that's when we start talking about agentic AI. That's the leap. Do this with me, do this like me, and if I tell you to, do this for me. Now, it can plan, it can execute, and it can adapt. Imagine it's Monday morning, and instead of walking into 40 open recs and a blank screen, your AI colleague says, hey, here's the pipeline that I built for you over the weekend. I scheduled outreach and flag the hiring manager who needs expectations reset. We really need to look at the job description. And look, this is not science fiction. This is the real power of agentic AI. And to really unpack this shift, I brought on some incredible voices onto the podcast. Each one of them had a different perspective on what AI means specifically for recruiting. So let me introduce you to the architect, the visionary, the strategist, and the professor. Each are experts in their field, and each will give you some insight on the real impact of AI in recruiting. Let's get into it. All right, for the architect, I want to go deeper with Stephen Chang from Hire Easy. He explained it very simply. Agentic AI is software that can plan and execute on its own.
Okay, so um, but my personal understanding of AI agent or agentic AI is about two things. First, it has the certain intelligence, right? And I think it's a semi-autonomous level, and that intelligence can use tools, using tools, right? That the tools can be database and can be APIs, can be third-party applications, but certainly that semi-autonomous intelligence is able to use tools. Okay, that's very important. And second is about the multi-step execution, the multi-step planning, reasoning, and execution. And that's the second core differentiation of agentic AI versus other typical generative AI or the previous NLP technologies. Okay, so then for our product, why we decided to go to agentic AI for two reasons. And first, over the past years, we observed one thing very, very interesting, okay? And absolutely blowed mind. Recruiters, the biggest problem. Recruiters, the biggest problem is the recruiting software. And how many your recruiters, right? And you work with many, many other recruiters and you manage them. How many of them didn't struggle at learning and mastering the recruiting software? And I think of, right? And then they learned the one tool and work so hard to learn, and then they cannot get rid of, right? And LinkedIn is the best example, but they spend a lot of time on learning that a boolean string and that a certain click, this click, that click. They spend a lot of time of on learning the software. So then the recruiting software is their biggest problem. So and then all of a sudden, and we also evaluate recruiters based on even we didn't call it, but then fundamentally we evaluate their value, or their value has been determined by how good they are at using software. Why they need to be judged in that way. Okay, so then we say, okay, we got to make a recruiting software easy to use for everybody. That a barrier should be removed. Then we judge recruiters' value based on their true value, finding the right people for their business. Okay.
I really enjoy my conversation with Stephen. It is always fun for me to talk to a CEO who is leveraging AI to solve a problem, and in this case, solving one in recruiting. And by the way, just a little promo, I will put the link to his video as well as the others in the show notes, so make sure that you go down and check out the full episode. And Stephen is one of the few that actually had me speechless whenever I asked one question on the podcast, and I still can't get over his answer. But all right, let's talk about what he said. I want you to stop and think about what it means. Right now, recruiters have to juggle everything: sourcing, screening, outreach, reporting, hiring manager relationship. But with Agentic AI, you can now delegate certain workflows, not just the find me candidates, but build a strategy, execute it, personalize this outreach, escalate exceptions. And then suddenly, rather than just being a recruiter that's chasing a process, you're a conductor, not the entire orchestra. Now, of course, you need to keep a human in the loop, but the role of the recruiter shifts from task doer to orchestrator. Now, for the visionary, I brought on Mark, who is the CEO of Hackajob and just another brilliant mind. He and I talked about my metaphor of Jarvis from Iron Man, and he said, don't think about agentic AI as a tool, think about it as a colleague, a digital twin.
I know this episode comes out a little bit later, but by the time this does come out, we'd have released a lot more products. But yesterday we just released voice mode on Hackajob Intelligence. You can now just speak to it, and it effectively becomes your sourcing agent, which is really, really exciting. So yeah, things are moving quick, and we're having a lot of fun doing it.
So it sounds like you're almost building the Jarvis for recruiters from Iron
I think
Man.
that's a brilliant, yeah. I think it's a brilliant mental model. Actually, one of our customers yesterday said, "Oh my God, this is like speaking to a colleague." And I was like, "That is the mental model. That is exactly how we're thinking about this, and it's a really powerful frame." I think one of the things that we haven't yet fully grasped in this topic of AI is so much of knowledge work today is done in a browser clicking buttons. You know, you go to www.isims.com, you open a rec, you click a load of buttons, you review profiles, you click a load of buttons, etc., etc. I actually think these systems are going to get so smart, you're going to orchestrate them inside your own system, whether that be Slack or Teams or however your business communicates, just like you do with a colleague. And then the system will be going away and doing all of that work, doing all those clicks, etc., and then just giving you the results where you need it. And so I think the Jarvis for recruitment's a really great mental model.
Well, let's kind of zero in a little bit on the recruitment industry and maybe even recruitment tech. I know that we've talked about just some of the changes that we foresee that there's a pretty high probability. I know I've shared some of my views, but what are some of the trends or tech that you think that should be adopted in order to stay ahead, specifically in TA?
I think if you take the hiring funnel, at the highest level, it's some type of attraction, going through that process. I think we will see the earlier parts of the funnel have a bigger impact on AI initially. And the reason for that is because I don't think anybody should be using AI to do automated decision making at this point. I don't think it's at that point that. And getting a new job is a really big deal. Hiring somebody is a really big deal. And until we're very, very sure that we don't have systems taking biased decisions or incorrect decisions, I don't think we want automated decision making. So therefore, you're going to end up a lot more in the workflow space and a lot more in the co-pilot space. So I think the three common use cases I hear from our customers is we are inundated with applications. How can we leverage AI to better understand who we should prioritize in the application? Not auto-rejecting people, but if I've got 100 CVs or resumes, these 10 I should reach out to immediately, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's getting very excited about interview scheduling. I would argue interview scheduling you could solve about AI, but whatever, there's some good AI solutions out there. So I think that AI benefits from all of those previous evolutions combined with this convergence of trends to then lead to this moment of acceleration. And, far smarter people than me, Sergey Brin being a great example, say, this is going to be the biggest technological revolution humanity has ever seen. And that's why for me, it's like more fun than it ever has been, because we can use these technologies to solve existing problems in brand new ways. And I think that's really cool.
I agree. It to me, it's fascinating. I'm not deeply tech like you. Like I know enough just to be dangerous. But I'm always willing to kind of try a new tool if it makes me move quicker, faster, more efficiently. And it gives me more time to spend on the things that I do need to have full attention, full brain power. Now imagine having a recruiter clone who knows your style, knows your tone, knows your moves, working right alongside with you. Now, most recruiters think about AI as a filter, a faster LinkedIn search. But when you reframe it as a teammate, a Jarvis, or a co-pilot, then you stop just being faster. You start becoming more intuitive, and you bring more value, not only to the organization, but also to your candidates and your hiring managers. That is what I am so absolutely excited about. All right, so next I want to talk about the strategists. Now, I hear a lot of pushback. Trent, I'm not a tech person, or I don't even want to deal with AI. And that is where I brought in Lydia Wu, and her insight really hit me. She says that this new world, you have two choices. You can be a passive consumer of AI or be an active contributor. And I had never really thought about it that way. Now, passive means that you take what it gives. A contributor means that you actually help shape it. You add your expertise, you teach it, you feed it context. And here's the truth. If recruiters just consume, AI will stay generic. But if recruiters begin to contribute, AI becomes a mirror of your expertise, your process, your recruiter intuition, and that's what makes you indispensable. Listen to what she had to say.
So going back to the very, very first bit of the conversation we had, which is the notion of human capital and the notion of understanding the finance mechanisms. Part of the reason why TA is taking such a hit is if you were to purely look at it from a business lens, would you pay for a resource to stay idle, or would you pay for a resource on a per use basis? So I think the reason why we're seeing a lot more TA folks being outsourced and like certain operating models in TA changing is the business and possibly some HR departments recognizing sort of if they want to pay for, commit to a fixed resource expense, or if they want to flex that resource spend based on need. So in a way, it sets for a function, but in another way, if you were to look at it from a different angle and reframe it, it does make sense from a business perspective. Now, for those who are kind of saying like, oh, I don't want to deal with AI again, like let me self-select out. I don't think you need to deal with AI. Like somehow we still perceive AI as I need to be hands-on keyboard coding AI to be a part of it. But reality is, I think we're all consumers of AI in one way or another. So one thing I would encourage people to kind of reframe their thinking on is AI only works with publicly available data that is out in the ecosphere. So the more data we feed it, the better it's trained, the better it works. Now, if you're just a consumer of AI, your views are not being baked into what the AI is generating or any LLM outputs essentially that supports the AI tool. So in order for you to kind of build a world, if you will, that you want to operate and you want to work in, it's almost like in addition to consumption, you need to think about how are you putting back your knowledge, your data, your perspective back into the AI ecosystem. And I think that's really the sort of micro/baby step for anyone to take, which is start actively engaging with AI, be it like a ChatGPT tool, be it the type of searches that you type into Google or any other search engine of choice. Look at it from the angle of what do I want to put back into the system to create the view, if you will, down the line that I think the world should be operating in. How do I put my perspective into this broader pool of data and knowledge that exists?
All right, last, let's bring out the professor. I spoke with Ken, who is the CEO of Ropes AI and HR Tech, and he said something that really stuck. In the AI era, doers will stand out. Not the loudest, not the fanciest tech talkers, the doers, the ones who experiment, who fail, who try again, but they always stay curious.
Few things kind of come to mind here. One, I do think you start to see, we see this again, I love using engineers, but I think it translates to other disciplines as well. As these AI tools get better and better and better, you kind of have the users versus the non-users, right? When we hire at Ropes, honestly, we look for candidates that are really great at using these AI tools, right? Like a lot of the stuff we're doing is not rocket science. We're not PhD math students. We're not creating a new model itself, right? We're using new applications, or meeting kind of customer demand, or filling out new features. There's iteration speed. This happens to be stuff that like LLMs are really good at, right? So when we're hiring, we're looking for folks that have used these tools and are good at it. And I think you see this in other disciplines as well. Think about like Ropes. We're a younger kind of AI-based company. There's a lot of TA leaders that adopt us, and our customers tend to be those that are more tech savvy, AI leaning, tech forward, right? We look at their workflows. We look at the way they're able to process candidates, or we look at like kind of the efficiency of their teams, or kind of like the KPIs they measure. You can see these measurable differences from when I think about the workforce, like kind of like the opportunity today. I do think this is going to be kind of my message. There's something to be said for just using these tools in general, right? Like getting comfortable with them. They're not going away. And the doers there, I think, are going to start to stand out in the workforce versus those that aren't.
Well, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by the doers will start to stand out?
Again, I like to use engineering, right? Like there's GitHub had really nice research on this that said folks they have this GitHub Copilot, right? So GitHub Copilot, essentially you're writing code. It kind of is like it's like a very smart autocomplete, right? So it can kind of see what you're doing and it'll kind of tab out the next few lines for you. They measure, right, like how much code does the average like GitHub user using Copilot write versus those that don't? And I think the difference was 60% or 2x or something really wide. Right? You see that in other disciplines, right? But like in TA, you look at folks that are using AI, like how many candidates are they able to talk to in parallel, right? Like as a recruiter, like am I able to kind of come to meetings or come to sessions better prepared because I had AI kind of summarize the notes of previous calls with a candidate prior to hopping on the phone?
Makes sense.
When we just started, right? So in November 2022, someone that used ChatGPT versus someone that didn't, the difference is probably relatively small, right? Because these models aren't that capable. But this year, I would argue like there is a pretty big opportunity there. Next year, when this model gets even better, there's going to be even a wider gap and so on, right? It's a little bit of a learning curve, right? Like these tools are strange. They're non-deterministic. They're constantly changing. I'm like, again, as big of an AI head as it gets, and I have trouble like keeping up with everything going on day to day.
AI moves way too fast for perfection. So that's why one of the best sustainable skills is curiosity. I actually talk about this in a video that I'll leave down in the details. Now, just as a reminder, I've been in HR for 20 years and led a lot of teams. And one thing that I have found is that complacent recruiters complain while curious recruiters learn. And that's why this gap continues to widen. And here's the good news. You don't have to be the most technical. You just have to be the most willing. So let's circle back up to my bold claim. There's a gap in recruiting, but it's not technical versus non-technical. It's complacent versus curious. And in this video, you heard from the architect who explained agentic AI, the visionary who reframed AI as a twin, the strategist who pushed us to contribute, not just consume, and then the professor who showed us that curiosity always wins. Now together, when you put their whole story together, it paints a pretty clear and exciting picture. The future belongs to the recruiters who lean in, not the ones that are going to hold back. So here's my challenge. Where do you stand? Are you complacent, waiting, resisting, maybe hoping that this wave will pass? Or are you curious? You're out there testing and learning and shaping what AI recruiting looks like. Maybe you're curious. I want to encourage you, start small. AI can absolutely consume you. Start with just opening YouTube. Type in your problem. How do I source X with AI? And I promise you, someone has solved it and is actively out there teaching it. They'll walk you through step by step. And of course, if you want more curated conversations, you need to subscribe. Check out the Human Capitalist podcast and watch my how-to recruiter AI videos. If you haven't already, do me a solid. Go ahead and hit that like, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Better yet, share this with someone that you think may need to hear the same message. All right, I am Trent Cotton, your Human Capitalist. I appreciate you taking the time to watch. And remember, invest in yourself because no one is going to do it like you do.